But before we can get to that promised land, we got to have a few years wandering in the desert, right? And here's what we're going to do, right? We got to cut Social Security, we're going to cut Medicare, we're going to cut, we're going to cut government's pensions. A lot of people are not going to get any Social Security at all. I'm sorry about that. Rates need to go up. We're going to get rid of the Federal Reserve. We're going to privatize money again the way it was before the Federal Reserve. Interest rates are going to be determined by the free market, not by a central Politburo of government planners at the Fed. Rates are going to go up. And of course, we can't afford to pay interest on the treasuries when interest rates go up. So we're going to have to restructure. So China, any countries around the world that own a bunch of treasuries, we're not going to pay you. Sorry. I mean, you'll get something. We're not going to totally screw you, but you're not going to get 100 cents on the dollar. You may get 30 cents on the dollar.
Renowned economist and gold bug Peter Schiff, known for his mostly bearish stance on the U.S. economy and his strong views on monetary policies, has outlined some important steps the Donald Trump administration must embark on as a matter of urgency if the U.S. economy is to survive what Schiff and other economists and financial analysts have described as an impending collapse. Schiff believes the United States must embark on an austerity program immediately because of the unsustainable levels of government spending, soaring national debt, and the long-term consequences of Federal Reserve policies. According to Schiff, the U.S. is heading toward a severe economic crisis driven by fiscal irresponsibility, and if corrective action is not taken soon, the collapse will be far worse and much more painful. One of Schiff's primary concerns is the ballooning national debt. He argues that the government is trapped in a dangerous cycle of borrowing, where it continually takes on more debt just to service past obligations. With rising interest rates, the cost of this debt will only increase, leading to a scenario where tax revenues are used primarily to pay interest rather than fund essential services. Inflation is another key reason Schiff insists on immediate austerity. He argues that excessive government spending, combined with Federal Reserve policies that involve printing money to monetize debt, has led to the persistent erosion of the dollar's value. This, in turn, has resulted in rising consumer prices, reducing the purchasing power of ordinary Americans. This is why one of Schiff's solutions to the problem is an immediate dissolution of the Federal Reserve. Like many sound money advocates, Schiff believes the Fed is the root cause of America's economic instability, inflation, and financial bubbles. He argues that the Fed's ability to manipulate interest rates and expand the money supply has led to unsustainable economic distortions, asset bubbles, and a devaluation of the U.S. dollar. In his view, a return to a free market monetary system, likely backed by gold, would restore economic stability and prevent the reckless monetary policies that he believes are destroying the economy. We will present clips from Peter Schiff's recent interview, in which he discusses tariffs and their impact, America's looming inflation problem, and urgent solutions that can save the economy from complete collapse. Please watch, share, and like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notifications bell for more videos like this. We appreciate the support and hope you enjoy the video.
There's so much misunderstanding about tariffs, especially with Howard Lutnick. And I've been posting a lot on X. He follows me. He doesn't follow that many people, maybe about 120 people. So I'm hoping that he'll actually read some of my posts so he understands, because he's got it completely wrong about tariffs. I mean, first of all, yes, he talks about, and so does Donald Trump, the good old days, in the 19th century when we only had tariffs. And he concludes that the reason the economy was so good back then is because we ran on tariffs. That's not exactly it. I mean, its logic is a little faulty. The reason we had a strong economy in the 19th century was because we had a tiny government. The government was so small that we could afford it on tariffs. So that's why we didn't have an income tax, because we didn't need an income tax. So today the government is much bigger because of the income tax. And what Howard Lutnick also doesn't understand is the reason we have an income tax, the agitation to get it. It was part of the populist movement to shift the burden of taxation from the working class to the rich. And everybody knew back then, when the country ran on tariffs, who paid them. It was the middle class and the poor who bought the products that were tariffed. And so we sold, or the government sold the country on the income tax as a trade-off for the tariffs. They said, hey, we can get rid of these tariffs that you have to pay, and we'll have income taxes that the rich are going to pay. And that was an impetus for it. Of course, now the middle class are taxed at rates far higher than anything envisioned for Rockefeller or Vanderbilt or Carnegie or those guys. But at least people understood tariffs. Ludnick has no clue, right? He keeps talking about the External Revenue Department as if these tariffs are going to be paid by Canada and Mexico or China. They're not. We can't tax those countries. All of the money that comes in from tariffs, every penny of it, whatever the government collects, comes out of the pocket of American consumers. That's it. It's like a sales tax, right? When you go and you buy something and there's a sales tax, the store doesn't pay the sales tax. You pay it. It's added to prices. Same thing with tariffs. The tariffs are paid by the importer, not the exporter. Whatever company imports the product pays the tax. And then that tax gets passed on to the consumer in the price. That's it. Very simple economics. Now, we need higher taxes because we're running huge deficits. So, in that respect, the tariffs will help shrink the deficits. But they are a tax hike, and people are going to be impacted. It's going to increase the pressure on American families who are struggling right now. They're going to struggle more as a result of these tariffs. It's not going to bring manufacturing home. I mean, not anytime soon. And even if we brought manufacturing home, how are we going to finance that? I mean, you can't manufacture without factories. So you got to build the factories before you can make anything. But also the factories need supply chains. We don't have those. We've got to reestablish those. So to recreate the industrial base that we no longer have is going to take many, many years, maybe a decade, and require a huge sacrifice. We have to finance the build out. And then we have to train the workers or build the robots or whatever. But it's going to take a lot of resources. And that means we have to stop spending and start saving. That means we're going to get higher interest rates. That means we got to get much lower stock prices and real estate prices. That means we go through a huge recession. That means we have a lot of bankruptcies and defaults and cuts to government spending. So all of this stuff will help in the long run, but it's going to be really painful in the short run. And nobody is prepared for that. Donald Trump is telling everybody it's going to be fantastic. It's a golden age. It's going to be very difficult because we're going to be in a huge recession very quickly. And the question is, are they going to stick to it, or are they going to go back for stimulus? Okay, cut rates, print money. We got to stimulate now. We're in a recession, and that's going to send already soaring inflation through the roof.
Schiff argues that the U.S. economy is heading into a recession, and while tariffs may not be the primary cause, they will certainly worsen things. He dismisses the idea that tariffs alone will trigger the downturn, emphasizing that underlying economic weaknesses, such as rising debt and excessive government spending, have already set the stage for a slowdown. In his view, tariffs will only intensify the economic pain by raising prices and increasing financial strain on consumers. Contrary to some economists who believe tariffs could have a deflationary effect, Schiff strongly disagrees. He points to the weakening U.S. dollar, which he describes as tanking and on the verge of a major breakdown. A declining dollar means higher costs for imported goods, which ultimately pushes consumer prices higher rather than lower. Inflation, rather than deflation, is the more pressing concern. One of Schiff's strongest warnings centers on the impact of tariffs on everyday Americans. He notes that two of the United States' largest trading partners, Mexico and Canada, supply a significant portion of imported food products. Tariffs on these countries will drive food prices even higher, exacerbating an issue many American households are already struggling with. Schiff also critiques the idea that higher food prices could be a good thing for the economy. He references President Trump's statement that farmers are about to make a lot of money, suggesting that while this may benefit a small percentage of agricultural producers, it will come at the expense of the vast majority of Americans who will have to pay more for basic goods. The economic benefit will be highly concentrated, while the broader population will feel the strain of rising costs. But Schiff doesn't just highlight the problems. He also proffers solutions that could get the U.S. economy back on track and help President Trump deliver on his promise of a golden age for America.
He has the right idea. Like the end of his State of the Union address was beautiful, very well written, very libertarian sounding message of restoring American freedom and shrinking government and doing all that. And I would say, you're right. That's what we need to do. And here's what has to happen to accomplish that. And what you need to do is you need to have a fireside chat, kind of Jimmy Carter style, only with a little bit of a better message. But you got to have a chat and you got to level with the American public and say, you know what? I had a talk with Peter Schiff and here's what we got to do. Right. And I know I promised a golden age in America. We're going to have one, but it's going to be maybe 5 years into the future. Right. But before we can get to that promised land, we got to have a few years wandering in the desert. Right. And here's what we're going to do. Right. We got to cut Social Security, we're going to cut Medicare. We're going to cut, we're going to cut government's pensions. A lot of people are not going to get any Social Security at all. I'm sorry about that. But we're going to means test it. We're going to have a way to make sure that the poorest among us, have something. We're not going to let anybody starve, but, we're not going to let you, pay your country club dues with Social Security. You're just going to have to keep working or something out. We don't have the money. Got to get rid of Obamacare. We're going to close down all these departments, education, energy, housing, and I forget. I mean, I'd say 3/4 of the government departments. We probably could shrink it down to maybe 5 or 6 of them left. We're going to get rid of all of our subsidies. No more agriculture subsidies. No more corporate welfare. We're going to slash defense spending. We're going to get rid of at least half. We're going to go. We got to cut government pensions. We got to make government a lot smaller. I know that's going to be a problem for a lot of people who are dependent on government, but the government's broke. We don't have the money. And the other thing that I would say is, look, we have $38 trillion of debt. Can't afford it. So we're going to restructure it. People are going to lose money who own U.S. treasuries. Sorry, we can't pay it back because interest rates have to go up, right? Rates need to go up. We're going to get rid of the Federal Reserve. We're going to privatize money again the way it was before the Federal Reserve. Interest rates are going to be determined by the free market, not by a central Politburo of government planners at the Fed. Rates are going to go up. And of course, we can't afford to pay interest on the treasuries when interest rates go up. So we're going to have to restructure. So China, any countries around the world that own a bunch of treasuries, we're not going to pay you. Sorry. I mean, you'll get something. We're not going to totally screw you, but you're not going to get 100 cents on the dollar. You may get 30 cents on the dollar. We got to figure out how to restructure these bonds. But we just got to dismantle. And of course, by the way, the saving grace is we're going to get rid of the income tax. We're going to get rid of the Social Security tax. We're going to get rid of the corporate income tax, the personal income tax. We're going to get rid of the estate tax. We're going to get rid of the gift tax. We're going to go back to the good old tax system that we had in the 19th century. We're just going to have sales taxes and tariffs and stuff like that, indirect taxes. So no more lawyers, no more accountants, right? Nobody has to worry about a tax day. No one has to keep any books and records anymore. If you work, you keep 100% of what you earn. The only time you pay a tax is when you spend money. Nobody's going to get taxed when they earn money. So, we could do all this, but, we got to go through, people are going to have to stop spending. I know, you can't just keep buying stuff on your credit card anymore. You got to save your money. And when you have enough savings, then you can buy stuff. You don't buy stuff and pay for it on a credit card because that credit ain't going to be there anymore without the Fed. Oh, and by the way, the government's not going to guarantee banks anymore. No more FDIC. So, better make sure that when you put your money in the bank, that they're not doing stupid things with it. And if a bank fails, that's it. So we got to roll back big government so we have a free market economy. But if we do all the right things, I mean, we're going to have a boom like we've never seen. We're going to have the real boom that Trump is just talking about. That's a pure fantasy because it's not going to happen. Because we got to, it's like they say you got to die, before you can go to heaven, right? Well, I'm not saying we have to kill ourselves, but we're going to have to go through some real pain to get where he's talking. And yeah, I guess you could say it's easy for me to say because I'm going to be fine, right? I'm not going to, the austerity is not going to impact me. I get that. But, it's still worth it. I mean, it's because the people are going to suffer more if we don't do this. I mean, it's not like austerity is for nothing. If we don't do the right thing, we're going to have hyperinflation. We're going to wipe out the dollar completely. And that's going to be far worse than anything that I'm talking about, right?
It's a choice.
You wipe out the dollar, you destroy the savings and the financial assets of a generation of Americans. I mean, that's worse than cutting Social Security. Because if we wipe out the dollar, the Social Security checks have no value. So even if you're poor and depend on Social Security, you got nothing.
Peter Schiff's overall assessment paints a grim picture. The economy is moving toward a recession, tariffs will amplify inflationary pressures, and rising bond yields will put additional stress on financial markets. If his predictions hold true, the average American will face a difficult economic landscape characterized by higher prices, rising interest rates, and increasing financial hardship. To avoid this dark and gloomy future, Schiff argues that austerity is not just an option, but a necessity. He suggests that the government must drastically cut spending, balance the budget, and restore confidence in the US dollar before the economy reaches a breaking point. While he acknowledges that such measures will be painful in the short term, he insists that the alternative, continuing down the path of endless borrowing and money printing, will lead to a much worse financial disaster. For Schiff, the choice is clear. The US must adopt fiscal discipline now, or face an inevitable and catastrophic economic collapse in the future. Do you agree with Schiff's suggestions about dismantling the Federal Reserve, reforming entitlement programs like Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, and drastically reducing the size of the government? Please share your thoughts and observations in the comments section below. Also, ensure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notifications bell for more videos like this. Thanks for watching.